Hello Braille class, today we are going to be reading the next part of Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator by Roald Dahl. So in the last part of the story, Charlie and his family were in the elevator and they were going really, really high and they were all grabbing on stuff because they were really scared at how high up they were going. At that precise moment, Grandma Josephine poked her head out from under the sheets and peered over the edge of the bed. Through the glass floor, she saw the entire continent of North America, nearly 200 miles away below and looking no bigger than a bar of chocolate. "Someone's got to stop this maniac," she screeched, and she shot out a wrinkled hand and grabbed Mr. Wonka by the coattails and yanked him backwards onto the bed. "No, no," cried Mr. Wonka, struggling to free himself. "Let me go. I have things to see to. Don't disturb the pilot." "You madman!" shrieked Grandma Josephine, shaking Mr. Wonka so fast his head became a blur. "You get us back home this instant." "Let me go," cried Mr. Wonka. "I've got to press that button or we'll go too high. Let me go, let me go." But Grandma Josephine hung on. "Charlie," shouted Mr. Wonka, "press the button, the green one. Quick, quick, quick." Charlie leaped across the elevator and banged his thumb down on the green button. But as he did so, the elevator gave a mighty groan and rolled over onto its side, and the rushing, whooshing noise stopped altogether. There was an eerie silence. "Too late!" cried Mr. Wonka. "Oh my goodness me, we're cooked!" As he spoke, the bed with the three old ones in it and Mr. Wonka on top lifted gently off the floor and hung suspended in midair. Charlie and Grandpa Joe and Mr. and Mrs. Bucket also floated upwards, so that in a twink the entire company, as well as the bed, were floating around like balloons inside the great glass elevator. So you can see here they're all up in the air floating inside the elevator. "Now look what you've done," said Mr. Wonka, floating around. "What happened?" Grandma Josephine called out. She had floated clear of the bed and was hovering near the ceiling in a nightshirt. "Did we go too far?" Charlie asked. "Too far?" cried Mr. Wonka. "Of course we went too far. You know where we've gone, my friends. We've gone into orbit." They gaped, they gasped, they stared. They were too flabbergasted to speak. "We are now rushing around the Earth at 17,000 miles an hour, Mr. Wonka said. "How does that grab you?" "I'm choking," gasped Grandma Georgina. "I can't breathe." "Of course you can't," said Mr. Wonka. "There's no air up here." He sort of swam across under the ceiling to a button marked oxygen. He pressed it. "You'll be all right now," he said. "Breathe away." "This is the queerest feeling," Charlie said, swimming about. "I feel like a bubble." "It's great," said Grandpa Joe. "It feels as though I don't weigh anything at all." "You don't," said Mr. Wonka. "None of us weighs anything, not even 1 ounce." "What piffle," said Grandma Georgina. "I weigh 137 pounds exactly." "Not now you don't," said Mr. Wonka. "You are completely weightless." The three old ones, Grandpa George, Grandma Georgina and Grandma Josephine, were trying frantically to get back into bed, but without success. They, of course, were also floating, and every time they got above the bed and tried to lie down, they simply floated up out of it. Charlie and Grandpa Joe were hooting with laughter. "What's so funny?" said Grandma Josephine. "We've got you out of bed at last," said Grandpa Joe. "Shut up and help us back," snapped Grandma Josephine. "Forget it," said Mr. Wonka. "You'll never stay down. Just keep floating around and be happy." "The man's a madman," cried Grandma Georgina. "Watch out, I say, or he'll lixivate the lot of us." So we're going to start Chapter 2, Space Hotel, USA. Mr. Wonka's great glass elevator was not the only thing orbiting the Earth at that particular time. 2 days before, the United States of America had successfully launched its first space hotel, a gigantic sausage-shaped capsule no less than 1,000 feet long. It was called Space Hotel USA, and it was the marvel of the space age. It had inside it a tennis court, a swimming pool, a gymnasium, a children's playroom, and 500 luxury bedrooms, each with a private bath. It was fully air-conditioned. It was also equipped with a gravity-making machine so that you didn't float about inside it. You walked normally. This extraordinary object was now speeding round and round the Earth at a height of 240 miles, Guests were to be taken up and down by a taxi service of small capsules blasting off from Cape Kennedy every hour on the hour, Mondays to Fridays. But as yet, there was nobody on board at all, not even an astronaut. The reason for this was that no one had really believed such an enormous thing would ever get off the ground without blowing up. But the launching had been a great success, and now that the Space Hotel was safely in orbit, there was a tremendous hustle and bustle to send up the first guests. It was rumoured that the President of the United States himself was going to be among the first to stay in the hotel, and of course, there was a mad rush by all sorts of other people across the world to book rooms. Several kings and queens had cabled the White House in Washington for reservations, and a Texas millionaire called Orson Cart, who was about to marry a Hollywood starlet called Helen Highwater, was offering $100,000 a day for the honeymoon suite. But you cannot send guests to a hotel unless there are lots of people there to look after them, and that explains why there was yet another interesting object orbiting the Earth at that moment. This was the large transport capsule containing the entire staff for Space Hotel USA. There were managers, assistant managers, desk clerks, waitresses, bellboys, chambermaids, pastry chefs, and hall porters. The capsule they were travelling in was manned by the three famous astronauts, Shuckworth, Shanks, and Schauler, all of them handsome, clever, and brave. In exactly 1 hour, said Shuckworth, speaking to the passengers over the loudspeaker, we shall link up with Space Hotel USA, your happy home for the next 10 years. And any moment now, if you look straight ahead, you should catch your first glimpse of this magnificent spaceship. Ah, I see something there. That must be it. Folks, there's definitely something up there ahead of us. Shuckworth, Shanks, and Schauler, as well as the managers, assistant managers, desk clerks, waitresses, bellboys, chambermaids, pastry chefs, and hall porters all stared excitedly through the windows. Shuckworth fired a couple of small rockets to make the capsule go faster, and they began to catch up very quickly. Hey, yelled Schauler. That isn't our space hotel. Holy rats, cried Shanks. What in the name of Nebuchadnezzar is it? Quick, give me the telescope, yelled Shuckworth. With one hand, he focused the telescope, and with the other, he flipped the switch connecting him to ground control. Hello, Houston, he cried into the mic. There's something crazy going on up here. There's a thing orbiting ahead of us, and it's not like any spaceship I've ever seen, that's for sure. Describe it at once, ordered ground control in Houston. It's all made of glass, and it's kind of square, and it's got lots of people inside it. They're all floating about like fish in a tank. How many astronauts on board? None, said Shuckworth. They can't possibly be astronauts. What makes you say that? Because at least 3 of them are in nightshirts. Don't be a fool, Shuckworth, snapped ground control. Pull yourself together, man. This is serious. I swear it, cried poor Shuckworth. There's 3 of them in nightshirts, 2 old women and 1 old man. I can see them clearly. I can even see their faces. Jeepers, they're older than Moses. They're about 90 years old. I wonder who they're seeing. You've gone mad, Shuckworth, shouted ground control. You're fired. Give me Shanks. Shanks speaking, said Shanks. Now listen here, Houston. There's these 3 old birds in nightshirts floating around in this crazy glass box, and there's a funny little guy with a pointed beard wearing a black top hat and a plum-coloured velvet tailcoat and bottle green trousers. Stop, screamed ground control. That's not all, said Shanks. There's also a little boy about 10 years old. That's no boy, you idiot, shouted ground control. That's an astronaut in disguise. It's a midget astronaut dressed up as a little boy. Those old people are astronauts too. They're all in disguise. But who are they? Cried Shanks. How the heck would I know? Said ground control. Are they heading for our space hotel? That's exactly where they're heading, cried Shanks. I can see the space hotel now about a mile ahead. They're going to blow it up, yelled ground control. This is desperate. This is... Suddenly, his voice was cut off, and Shanks heard another quite different voice in his earphones. It was deep and rasping. I'll take charge of this, said the deep, rasping voice. Are you there, Shanks? Of course I'm here, said Shanks. But how dare you butt in? Keep your big nose out of this. Who are you anyway? This is the President of the United States, said the voice. And this is the Wizard of Oz, said Shanks. Who are you kidding? Cut the piffle, Shanks, snapped the President. This is a national emergency. Good grief, said Shanks, turning to Shuckworth and Schauler. It really is the President. It's President Gilligrass himself. Well, hello there, Mr. President, sir. How are you today? How many people are there in that glass capsule? Rasped the President. 8, said Shanks, all floating. Floating? So let's have a look. There are the astronauts looking through the window at Charlie and his family and Willy Wonka in that elevator, and they're telling the President what they can see. I hope you enjoyed reading the next part of the story, and we're going to be reading some more tomorrow. Bye!